everybody. Here we go. We got Block Party, last one up for the draft, and then we can talk about. I can't wait till this draft's over. We'll do some stuff on the post game, the post draft guys, because now we can actually not have to speculate, and we can see how they might fit in. I'm your host, Mike Wahle. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying, please subscribe, rate, review on our YouTube channel, Process to Perform. Hit me up, Mike Wahle68 on X, Twitter. Process to Perform on Instagram. Our show, as always, is sponsored by BetOnline. BetOnline is your number one source for all your summer sports needs this season, from Major League Baseball, golf, NBA, NHL playoff stats. NBA had some heaters last night, by the way, guys. It's the season's too long, and then it's like you're watching. It's like you forget the NBA is going on, and all of a sudden the playoffs come back. You're like, man, this is what a sport, unbelievable. All the latest stats, news, and scores available to follow your favorite teams. Get the latest odds lines, including the latest team matchups, player props, and odds on just about every sport out there. So head to the website today. Use your mobile device to get in on the action. BetOnline, where the game starts. You know, when you start thinking about how does a team win a championship, obviously, you know, what key positions are the most important. And generally, when you talk to general managers, personnel guys, people in the building, I think even players would say, you know, even if like a guard like myself would say, the most important positions historically have been quarterback, left tackle on offense, and then edge rusher and cornerback, defensive back on defense, which, you know, makes sense for a number of reasons, especially, you know, probably 10, 15 years ago, even 5 years ago, before, you know, this kind of wave of like the Shanahan, McVay, all these offenses really took over, and there's just a lot more balance and complexity in the running game that maybe lets you hide a left tackle a little bit more than you used to. Certainly with the way that defenses are playing now, you could make the argument that you can draft a type of corner, but, you know, realistically, if Deion Sanders was in this draft, they would draft him very high because he could take away half the field. Running back is a position that has gone from, in my day, the absolute pinnacle of, you know, non-quarterback players, but could be the face of the franchise, could be the more, you know, I always think of, you know, Tennessee Titans with Eddie George and McNair. I mean, that was an Eddie George team. Even Steve, you know, McNair was a great player and you know, certainly is in the Ring of Honor for that team. That was like an Eddie George led team. You think about Jamal Lewis and the Ravens. You know, certainly you thought about the defense on that side, but, you know, Amon was, even with Brett, Amon was such a vital part of what this team was about. To me, the running back is arguably the best athlete on the field, not named offensive line, of course. But they, first of all, play offense, so we know they have elite processing speed. We know that this camera thing, they put up freakish numbers at the combine. And now, you know, unlike maybe the Eddie George type or the Jamal Lewis type, it's ground and pound, you know, screen game, check, passing game, check. Yep. And of course, different types of runs. We used to be, the NFL and fans will talk about this all the time. Well, or even like, you know, high school coaches and offensive line guys. Well, are you a gap guy? Are you an inside guy? You're not. You got to be able to run everything, right? A good offensive line can run everything, and most really high level backs probably have a preference, but they're really good at a lot of things, right? And I'm talking about different schemes in the running game, but I'm also talking about all the stuff they can do out of the backfield. Now, when guys like LaDainian Tomlinson and Reggie Bush showed up, that changed the game, I think, for me, as far as what a running back was supposed to do in an offense. Even with, you know, the great players that we had, when Reggie went to, I remember when I was with Carolina, Reggie went to New Orleans. All of a sudden, it was like they didn't care as much how many carries he got. It turned into a matchup problem. LT, when we went down and played the Chargers, I think a lot of Packer fans will remember this game down in San Diego. I think 2002, 2003, or maybe 2001, when we went down there, we beat the brakes off them, but they started putting LT in the slot, and they started matching him up against different guys on our defense, and he had a huge day. And it just goes to show you, just like, we have the tight end position has morphed a little bit from a traditional, the kind of the Bubba Franks, the guys that I loved, the Gronkowskis, to smaller guys split out. It just turns into a matchup game, turns into the chess match. And I think the running backs did that about 10, 15 years before the tight ends that are doing it now. Like that model hasn't really changed. They've just kind of inserted a different piece. But the ability of those guys to do so much more than just run the ball, I think, is what makes them really special. And one thing you hate to see is a position group that was so widely beloved fan base wise, obviously, coveted by owners and general managers. It's really become devalued in the way that they think about it, because strictly from a dollars and cents standpoint and a lifetime expectancy of the player, it just doesn't. It's so easy for these guys to draft them, add a fifth year, franchise them, get them to a certain age, and go, you're not worth money anymore, because of the lifespan only goes to about 29 years old until you run out of kind of rope as far as the wear and tear on your body. And then they give them, these smaller contracts. The other thing that's really tough with running backs is you want to use them, but then if you use them too much, you're going to devalue them later on. But if you have them and you don't use them and you're trying to save them, it seems like they end up getting hurt regardless, because it's such a violent position. So there's the shelf life with a running back is real, and certainly guys can meet or exceed those expectations. Adrian Peterson always comes to mind. He probably could go play right now if he wanted to at a really high level. Just like there's players at every position that kind of exceed expectations. But generally speaking, it does feel it sucks, but it feels kind of right, where if you get a 30-year-old guy, you start going, oh, can we pay him? Because they generally break down right there. And this rolls into, our best guy for the last couple of years, Aaron Jones. The Packers know how important that position is. I mean, the best player on offense for the last couple of years is Aaron Jones, and we reward him by giving him a pink slip, and he goes over and now he's going to play for the Minnesota Vikings. And I guarantee this guy has a really, really good year. Obviously, that's going to be a little bit adjusted for who plays quarterback for the Vikings, but just it's strictly in terms of they have a good offensive line that's certainly developing. I think they have a great play caller, and you've got for me, an elite level. If he's not tier 1, he's tier 1A in the running back pantheon in the National Football League. So what do? The Packers bring in Josh Jacobs, who is an incredible runner, has had so far a very good year, a very good career, with the Las Vegas Raiders. But I had some stats. He has a career 4.2 yards per carry average. He averages 261 carries a season. There was a year he was well over 300. So he's a workhorse guy that has good, not great numbers, and we can argue a lot of that's probably because who he's playing behind as far as Las Vegas talent wise. But then you have the second player in A.J. Dillon, who they decided to bring back, and I know that we've talked about that at length, and whether or not that's a head scratch move, I get what happened there. I think you kind of understand the tea leaves. He's a 4.1 yards per carry guy over the course of his career. Now, to put it in perspective, Aaron Jones is a 5 yards a carry guy during the course of his career. So Aaron Jones is up in the Amon Green realm, right? Aaron, they're five yards a carry guys. You're dropping down almost an entire yard per carry for the entire room now. And I bring this up because when you start looking at the teams, when we switch to, hey, we need two guys. We can't have just this workhorse that we're going to pump and pump and pump, which I think Josh Jacobs has been to some extent with the Raiders. But if you want to bring in that change of pace guy, all of a sudden you look at the body type you have now and the production that you have, and you feel pretty confident that Josh Jacobs, when you say he's going to average 4.2, that he's a guy that's not going to have a 1 yard, a negative yard run, and then break off a 10 or 12 yard run to get to get that even. You think, like, you feel pretty confident that he's going to have a much more kind of smooth and linear. He seems like a 4-yard, 4.5-yard carry kind of guy over the course of a game or the course of a season. So you'd love to get this home run hitting kind of player, this change of pace player, this Bijan Robinson kind of player, this Jamar Gibbs kind of player, or Jahmyr Gibbs, and excuse me. And what you'd love to see about like Jahmyr, the way the Lions use him is he could be a feature back for a lot of teams, but because they have David Montgomery and the way that they use those guys, they can run the same stuff, but he runs it different. And they have a whole section of their playbook that is dedicated to the unique skill set that he has. Other guys can do it. He can just do it a lot better. So the Packers need this change of pace, this home run guy. And look, everybody always says there's great running backs in these classes. I just took a look at a couple of them. Here's my criteria. So we're all kind of on the same page here. Because we wanted to change a pace guy, I go to these websites and it's like the scouts come in and say, hey, you want to watch these 10 players? Which ones do you like? And you got to cut the herd. I'm cutting the herd. I want a guy that runs a 4.4 or less. Why? Because we have a workhorse guy. Let's go get the open field explosive player. So looked at 3 guys, Jaylen Wright, Trey Benson, and then I went to Braelon Allen because 2 reasons. 1, Wisconsin running backs. There's been history of those guys going first round. And 2, this guy's, we'll get into it, but he's 235 pounds running a 4.4. So let's watch some of this tape on Jaylen Wright first. If I can get this up. Here we go. Jaylen Wright out of Tennessee, 5'10", 210 pounds. Look, numbers-wise, absurd. And I'll just say this. I didn't choose Jonathan Brooks because the 40 time, you're going to go, Mike, how much do you care about the 40 time when, half of it's there's a lot of teaching that goes into being able to run a fast 40, and it doesn't translate to play speed. I understand that completely. We don't have the GPS numbers. I have to cut the herd somehow. And quite frankly, there's no way that Jonathan Brooks is as good as Bijan Robinson from last year, played the same position at the same place. So I just kind of took him off the board. That's probably not fair. Because on a lot of these draft things, he's number 1, and he probably well-deserved. So you make a couple assumptions. 1, at 25, he's not going to be there. And 2, lightning can't strike twice. So 4.3, 840, lightning fast, 38-inch vert. I mean, that's going to be a top percentile guy for you guys who love the RAS scores. And then 134-inch broad jump is honestly absurd. So let's take one more peek here. The number one thing for me when I'm watching this player, he's got elite speed, but can he hold up? If you don't want to completely change the offense and just, you want to run your mid zone, you want to run your outside, you want to run your scheme game, you want to put him in the slot. How many hits can this guy take given the way that he runs? So first things first, I, of course, have to start this off with, what did I do? Just a fantastic job by the offensive line. So we've got a little stunt here by the defense. Center really does a good job of coming off and picking up the inside slant. Bang, opens it up. 33 just for some reason sits on the backside and lets the tackle eat him up. And like I'm saying here with this safety, you shift, you beat. This guy, with a guy with this kind of speed, you shift your weight. You see his right shoulder's dipped, coming in the wrong angle. Bye-bye. I mean, this guy is lightning, man. It's fun. It's funny. The thing about like wide receivers, DBs, and running backs, it's just fun to watch guys run fast. I don't get it. You sit here and watch 100. I was watching some soccer last night, some kids soccer, and there's just one kid that's like faster than everybody else, and you just start watching them because you go, it's just like anything else. It's like watching guys lift heavy weights, guys run fast. Fun to watch, man. Here's the kind of stuff we're talking. So in college, you might be able to think, okay, I'll just outrun this defensive tackle, even though this player has outside. The defensive back for Georgia has done his job. He's outside leverage. You're not going to get outside of him. or at least that's not the pathway to success. You put your foot in the ground right now, the way this is looking, you can get downhill. You could actually might be able to beat this defensive tackle. If you don't beat him, you're going to at least get past the line of scrimmage. It's going to hurt, but you got to go. We're not running away from anybody like in this situation right here. When you watch this player, and this happens to a lot of young guys, it's be more decisive. There's a lot of backfield jump cuts. And some of this stuff is like, look, Georgia's got a great defense, and they're beating players on the offensive line right now. What you'd like to see is, look, there's only one Barry Sanders, right? And you want to, if you're going to be a guy that dances in the backfield, it's got to pay off more than it pays off for this particular player. You want to see guys that are a little more decisive. You got kind of a two-way go here, and he just kind of runs into the back, fumbles his way around. You see this, again, just elite play speed. And the job that the offensive line does of creating seams, it's always hard to watch high-level running backs in the college game. Because, like, for example, Georgia's famous for running like they're 33. But they're not playing top-level competition all the time. Like, this isn't an NFL defense. They'll give up a lot of yards on the ground if that's the choice versus, giving the quarterback the ball 50 times. But you just see the way this guy can hit a hole. If you think about the mid-zone stuff and kind of getting at that angle, putting his foot in the ground or being able to accelerate, he is absolutely a different kind of playmaker. Now, this is where we talk about scheme, style, and fit. You hand him the ball and he's going downhill. It's not that he can't have success. It's just like we'll show two of these where it's not as smooth. When he's got things happen fast, you got to make a jump cut or something. It just doesn't look the same as it does from a mid zone. So here we've got guys covered up, but inside leverage against, believe that's the guard on the upside. The left guard's got, got not beat, but the defensive tackle's doing a good job holding up for inside leverage. And you got to kind of make a decision here. I'm going to hit this thing as hard as I can, because you even see the center rising on the other side. These blocks don't last forever. And when it's time to go, you got to go. He jump cuts, ends up getting washed. And guys go, oh, that's the O-line fault. Fair enough. But I'm just telling you, like, you've seen guys like Amon Green that I played with, other kind of dynamic but more polished running backs. When they know it's just going to, hey, let's fight for a hard two, and it's time to fight for a hard two, they'll just fight for a hard two. Same kind of idea here. How fast can you hit the hole? This play, that's honestly just a standout play by this defensive back. Getting chased down. Is there the awareness? Does he know he's there? You just, with the lack of a backside hand here to stave off, you just always wonder. So I think for me, if the Packers are going to run mid-zone, outside zone, he's a better option certainly than AJ because he's such a change of pace. You don't get a great sense of all the downhill stuff. Like Josh Jacobs is, it's like Josh is good at a lot of things. He's an NFL running back, and this guy can develop into that. But you just say, what is the natural predilection for this player? It's like, B gap, C gap kind of runner. Didn't see a lot of cutback. Didn't see a lot of decisiveness when he had to go hit A gap and maybe jump cut. Didn't see a lot of get behind your pads and make first downs. Now, one of the things, can he hold up? He's 5'10", 210 pounds. He's not small, but he's not big. He's got that elite level speed. He kind of looks like Chris Johnson a little bit. I don't want to say he's Chris Johnson at all because he's not necessarily. But just from a body type, he kind of looks like that. He's got the small ankles, he's super, super, super fast. You can get him in space, and certainly as a change of pace guy, probably not a first-round guy for the Green Bay Packers, but as a change of pace guy, it's certainly interesting. Now we move on to Trey Benson from FSU, 6 foot, 216 pounds, a little bit bigger guy, 4.39 40 elite speed. not as you'll see this for a couple guys. It's interesting. Not as elite, not as elite in the vertical, which you see. I remember Leonard Fournette had like a bad vertical compared to his 40 time. Everything else when he was coming out of high school and college, he was going to be like the next guy, and he's a phenomenal player. But I remember watching and going, his like vertical was like 31 or 32. It just wasn't very impressive, given that like offensive linemen have jumped 33.5 inches, for example. The 1.52 split is pretty good. You're bordering on elite. You got to get under that 1.5, and you're going to get into like rare air. So this guy has home run ability. He's actually a natural downhill runner, and you just have to figure out if he's a scheme fit. So this is the thing that was easier about this tape is there's a lot of pro looks here. So you're going to see the double trap, you're going to see the tackle guard pull, you're going to see the fullback lead, etc. And I think this guy does a really good job of setting up his players for success. Now, clearly, as you get older and better, you do this at a higher level, right? This isn't a walk-in day one thing, but just from a standpoint of understanding the patience that it takes on some of these outside gap plays, really impressed with how he moves. Now, I think we'll see it here. He's going to run a little screen. And this isn't his problem because how you tuck your arm, okay? But right here, let's just get downhill, right? We're trying to run away from guys. You want to see a little more violence. You want to see a pad level issue or a pad level change of kind of hip height and be able to strike and not try to, if you're going to outrun, you got to have that hand out. Again, a lot of this is fumbling around with the ball when you're trying to catch it. But just from a body position standpoint, one thing that did stand out with this guy was despite being a downhill style runner, he doesn't always get behind his pads. Okay, you got three options here. And this is kind of what I'm talking about. If I showed this to Deshaun Foster, Stephen Davis, Amon, Najee, they'd go, whoa. You got three options, man. The one in the middle looks pretty good too. Safety's breaking down on you. Like, let's hurt some people. And that's tough. I mean, he just absolutely got dog walked. And it happens to everybody. And it's one instance. But you're not looking like, when I say it happens to everybody, you're not hesitating to get beat. If you get knocked on your ass, that's one thing. If you hesitate, that's another. We want ultra aggressive guys. I thought this is a great job of getting what he could. So we got the corner firing off the slot. So slot comes, he's got to beat the slot right there and just get by. And now you'd love to see him try to make a jump and go outside. The defensive end is kind of held his gap, but just great job of getting past this guy and getting to the hole and then trying to get and push the pile and get what you can. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but you just like the instincts. Again, just going downhill, trying to get what you can sometimes. And I bring that up, and so you guys are going, why are you showing me like 1 yard gains or whatever? Well, because as an offensive lineman, as a guy who's trying to be part of the offense, if you bring in a guy and it's feast or famine, like it's literally, okay, he's going to get 20 yards or he's going to get -2, you don't really want him in the game because you're going to get -2 a lot more, and you're just setting yourself up for bad situations. Like it doesn't bother anybody to grab 4 yards, 5 yards a pop. Like, we love that as an offense. We love that. Now, if you can take 20 yards a pop because it's out there for the taking, you're playing 5-man boxes or whatnot, that's one thing. But if you're, like Jaylen Wright, a little bit different, right? You don't see him. You see him jump cutting and trying to move horizontal, getting tackled. Like, you see this guy getting to the line of scrimmage, keeping his pads downhill, and that's important. Just from what's the next call going to be? It's 2nd and 6. If it's 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 10 now, because I'm going sideways, I got a problem. If it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 5, that's a very, very manageable 3rd down. So you see here, this looks like a great block between the right guard and the center. Things change faster than National Football League. You got to put your pads down and just go. Right? And so even though that hole doesn't open up like you want, we're seeing what he's seeing. He hits the hole. He gets under his shoulder pads. goes downhill, fights for that yardage. Like to see it. I like Florida State's offense, side note, just the way they think about blocking. Same thing here. The guard just does a bad job. The one thing you don't like is when you're getting into this moment, he just plays very tall. And it's not like he doesn't get under his pads. His natural running style is high, though. And there's a difference between, again, I use Amon for a reference because of Green Bay. But when Amon was at full speed, he was upright. When Amon wasn't full speed, he was come get some, right? You just saw top of the numbers, shoulder pads, and top of the helmet. And that's the kind of guy, regardless of if you want to change a pace guy or not, you got to have a player that can deliver a blow or just be so elusive if he doesn't get touched like, Barry Sanders. Because they're not going to be able to hold up. Like these plays happen in the National Football League all the time where a guy catches a stray right here and just gets whopped a lot because he's standing straight up and down. So we got trips right here. Like 12 personnel, NFL style play, downhill, like him running behind his pads. You see this, so we got the trap look. This is an interesting play because I had to watch this twice because they got the guard kicking out, and for whatever reason, this defensive end penetrates, but I don't know where the running back's going here. Guard's still got to get over. He can cut inside. I mean, there's a huge lane. He just makes this odd decision because the defensive end went upfield to try to run away from him. Again, that's just coaching. You just get a couple reps of that. It never happens again. But here, to the point, does a great job of being patient, getting downhill. It's one of his best runs of the night. We're seeing a ton of stuff here again as far as his ability to set up blocks. Now watch 84. He times this perfectly and just waits and waits and waits for 84 to make sure that safety's taken care of. Great job. And then just running downhill. Love it. Same kind of idea. Just waiting for his guys, setting up the block. He's able to hit the hole with speed, and he does put his pads down. Look at the power running through. You need this more than anything. Is, hey, can I get downhill and finish? Really, really like a lot of things you see on tape from this guy. Upright running style, but you do see, especially when they get into like the gap stuff, and you start talking about scheme fits now. Okay, so he's hitting a lot of kind of B gapping out, not a lot of downhill. You see a lot of action with pulling guards, 12 personnel with at least one tight end or fullback, whatever you want to call it, kind of coming around and being the lead. So a lot of Shanahan, LaFleur-esque plays that fit into the system that makes sense from a blocking standpoint for the Green Bay Packers. This guy not only has seen a ton of it, but he really sets up players. He sets up his guys for success. And he does play much more upright when there's a guy blocking in front. Excuse me. He plays with much better pad level when guys are in front of him blocking. He's setting up blocks. Last guy, Braelon Allen from Wisconsin, 6'1", monster, 235. Here's interesting. 4.40, fast. 26 reps, strong. Running back strong. So he's got that Wisco profile. You think of Ron Dane. I mean, they just had guys and guys and guys, right? He does feel like more of a workhorse guy. Like we're watching him in part because he's from Wisconsin. He does feel like he feels like a guy you could give the ball to 25 times again. He does have a lot of watch out plays. And what I mean is, and I think we'll see it early here, is like if you're a defensive back and this guy gets going downhill, you better watch out. Now, again, pro style look. Double pull, tight end lead, downhill. They got a lot of stuff going on that looks, very familiar to the National Football League. Now, I mean, first of all, the one thing that stands out on this tape, maybe more than anything, it's probably because I'm offensive lineman, but some of the holes this guy's running through are like this, man. I mean, it's like drive a semi through it. But you need to see more like this where he's just taking an Iowa guy for a ride past the first down mark. I mean, when this guy gets going downhill fast, really is something special. Not much you can do about that. 4.40 and a stiff arm. This is big time play. There was not enough of these plays on this particular tape, but that play that's a big time. You're that big, that strong, can turn the corner on the guy, right? This isn't like watching Brandon Jacobs, who's 6'4", 250, and he was fast, but compared to Braelon Allen, he looks like he's lumbering a little bit, right? Like you're just going like, oh my God, this is going to hurt. This guy looks like he's trying to run around and still has the strength and power in that upper body to do some damage just with a stiff arm. Again, look at the separation from the line of scrimmage this offensive line gets. Offensive lineman at heart, guys. So let's go back and watch the left tackle here. So we got inside slant, and he just rolls his hips into this and just drives this guy off the ball. That's so big time, man. Now, what I love about Braelon Allen, but you don't see it every play. Again, he's more of a workhorse guy. But again, if you're comparing him to, AJ, if you're comparing him to Josh Jacobs, they're different. They are different styles. Like this guy's much more. I think Josh Jacobs is actually much more violent. But this guy, and we said this last year a lot. Aaron Jones was a more violent runner than AJ, even though Aaron Jones weighed 30 pounds less than him. This guy is also in that. I think he's more violent than AJ because he's a little bit more twitchy and explosive, but he's not that violent type necessarily that's going to blow your doors off. I think when he gets in with DBs and stuff, he just, as opposed to some of the other two guys, he knows to put his pads down. Like he knows exactly what he's supposed to be doing. Love to see a stiff arm there. The vision here. So the offensive lineman is beaten here. The defensive tackle gets, resets the line of scrimmage. So you really want to see that and hit it. And we just showed two other guys with Jaylen Wright hit the backfield, a little bit of hesitation, maybe go sideways. You love this quick jump cut and just get downhill. Just get downhill, just like your coach. Excellent. I thought this was odd, and this isn't a big play. Like a lot of people drop this ball. This isn't an easy ball to catch. But I said it a little bit earlier. He's got the 4.4, but a 32-inch vertical and a 117-inch broad. Go back, and I think we had a 38-inch vertical and a 135-inch broad jump, in a same position. Like, that is a huge discrepancy. And I think if you look this up, you guys like the RAS scores and stuff, there is something to the vertical jump, the broad jump. The 4.4 is important, and he certainly has speed. But from a purely explosiveness standpoint, I'd be interested to go back and see what Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs last year had. Because, and again, a lot of this is coached now. Don't get me wrong. So you have to watch the tape. But I do think Leonard Fournette is a kind of a realistic body type player to measure this guy by, because I think the numbers you're going to see are kind of similar as far as he's got some pace on the ground. He's certainly explosive. He's powerful. But when you talk about really, really twitchy, elite kind of fast twitch fibers, 32-inch vert and 117-inch broad is not at the elite level. And I think Fournette was kind of that way. Again, still had a really good career. But I think it does put you into that, I'm not buying this guy or paying this guy, drafting this guy to get a home, like for a home run player. I'm getting him because I think I can build my offense around, 20, 25 carries a game with him. Little backside trap. Again, he can get downhill and he can put his shoulder into people. If you were in the market, this warms the heart. Look at this. Bye-bye. I mean, let's watch it again, man. God, how much fun is that? I mean, this is Iowa. This isn't slapdick central either playing defense. This is some good guys. I love this. I mean, and this is what's hard about watching. If you're just looking strictly at production, Wisconsin's always got good offensive line. Even when they're not good, they're good. And they got a 5-man box here. And they're thinking that linebackers will be able to make that play. And what you love to see is they're banking on that outside linebacker making that play. He sees it. He hits the Jets, and he slips right by him and gets all the way downhill, finishes with his pads. So he's one of these guys where, the more you watch him, the more you like him. Now you see the penetration, and what you'd love to see here is, hey, I know I'm going this way. This isn't going to work. I need to put my foot in the ground now and just get downhill because we have two guys getting beat on my left. Yep. Just get downhill as much as you can. Sometimes it's how they deal with the L's sometimes that matters just as much as how they take the good holes, right? When things go poorly, can you get positive yardage? Again, there's some big holes here, and he's just making some very subtle movements. I think if we had the end zone, you'd see some little jump cuts. Now, here's the stuff we're talking. Stop spinning, man. Just be who you are. Just be you. So I think that's enough of that. Listen, the verdict for me is, and I might change. I wrote a note that I wanted to say, I like the FSU kid the best. So I like Trey the best, and I think that's fair for what you want, what you need. The way that he reads the blocks, particularly on the fullback with the tight end leads and the double pulls, I really like that. Jaylen Wright is like a true change of pace guy. He's a home run guy. He got open field explosiveness. I think both of them do, but he kind of looks the part a little bit more. When I say change of pace, I'm also talking about maybe do you want to explain the playbook? I do think that both of Trey and Braelon are more workhorse type players, and I think the more I watch the Wisconsin kid, the more I like him because I can see how he settles into an NFL offense. You see, there's a lot of subtlety in some of his movement, but he tries to keep his pads downhill for the most part. Wright does feel like a big play waiting to happen. He's just got that body type and the way that he moves. You're just going, okay, there's something here that maybe these other two don't necessarily have. But you can't, if Josh Jacobs goes down and this is what you're left with, I think you got a problem because I don't know if he can hold up in the NFL the way he does. Certainly, Benson, you talk about the upright running style. It's something he can fix. And I think as you see people in front of him, he continues to play a little bit lower when he's just kind of got that open hole. It just gets a little bit upright. These, again, are just coachable things. All of this stuff is like the only things that aren't necessarily coachable is one of them's got a 32-inch vertical and it runs a 4.4. That's a little bit odd. Again, I put him in that Leonard Fournette bucket. Really good players, though. Really good players. All right, I got some listener questions that were really. This is probably the best group of listener questions that I've had. So I wanted to address as many as I could in the time that we have allotted here. Number one, what does a good S&C program look like for a rookie offensive lineman? Is anything different? No. So here's the thing about going in when you get indoctrinated by a team. The strength coach has a philosophy, and I think a lot of guys probably heard the Chargers guy who was the Michigan guy for Harbaugh, and he started talking. He had a very, very well thought out answer for what they do, and the kind of the points of emphasis that he has as far as mobility, strength in your shoulders, hips, ankles, etc. And I think a lot of guys are as opposed to when I was playing, it's like move a lot of weight as fast as you can. Movement is first here for sure. Movement comes first. So mobility and then adding strength to mobility becomes first. It's kind of how they build everything out. But basically, where you go is going to dictate what you do as any new player. If you have a guy that's a circuit guy, you're going to learn how to do circuits. Now you can fight that and go somewhere else, but that's what they're going to teach you. If you're a kettlebell guy, he's going to do a lot of kettlebell stuff. If he's guy's an ex Olympic lifter, you're going to learn how to Olympic lift. So everybody's got their own way to move weight, and everybody's got their own way to develop. The big difference, I think, and I think they do this in college now more than anything. That's probably where the NFL figured it out. But you're going to start with, they're going to take like your FMS score, which is your functional movement screen. They're going to do some sort of screen, and they're going to hopefully attack where you don't move very well. So they're going to try to make you as bulletproof as possible. And they find that to be more important than, let's say, being a 600-pound squatter and a 400-pound hang clean guy. Where I think back in the day, they would say, "Oh, this guy's ankle's super stiff. Let's just change like his technique." We've talked about this a lot. Anybody who's watched our offensive line stuff, and they're like, "Let's just try to get his bench press up." They don't look at it the same way. The strength and conditioning room, I think, has evolved significantly. I think in some ways it's not as good, but I do think just from a mobility standpoint and addressing that and making sure the guys address it, I think that's probably the biggest change you've seen in the last 20 years. Number 2, cutting Jones. Good idea? I don't think so. I think because of what you see here, speaking out of both sides of my mouth, he is turning 30 years old. There's all of that goes with it. Certainly. Is he good for another year? Probably. Would he play for another year? Probably. Could you got him for $7 million a year, whatever he's getting for the Vikings? Probably. It just felt like the right time for Goody to go pick up Josh Jacobs. He gets him for 3 years until he's 29 years old and they workhorse back and all that. And he might be a phenomenal player for the Green Bay Packers. There's so few guys that are so good at multiple things, and a violent runner and a locker room leader and all the things that a guy like that brings to the table. It's just a tough loss. You see these guys, and listen, Aaron Jones came out of like Texas El Paso. I forgot what round he was drafted, if he was drafted at all. Like he was a relative unknown guy and turned into a franchise. He's a Ring of Honor player now for the Green Bay Packers. So you just never know what you're going to get. These guys do a much more extensive search for those type of players than I certainly am. But when you look at the top-rated prospects, a lot of it matters how they adapt to the NFL. A lot of it matters how they're used, as you can see with a lot of these guys. A lot of it matters like when you're not going to get 5 yards of free space like the Wisconsin Lions given Allen. But it's hard when you have a known entity. Is hard to give up, and it must have been a difficult move for the Packers. But I guess we'll just have to see. For me personally, I'd love to get him for another year, but that's what happens. Have you ever seen a front office draft board? How do they rate players, numerical or letter grades? There's a lot of stuff that goes into this, but look, yes, I've seen the draft board. They'll literally do it sequentially, and they'll have position groups. They could have another group that says like just how we've ranked everybody regardless of position. And they usually have a numerical score. They don't have letter grades because they want to go like, oh, he's a 5.7 or versus a 5.6, right? Or, he's a 9.5 star, not a 9 star. As opposed to ABC, like you don't want to go from like we'd go A to F or something. They'd go A to Z. It'd be too much. And they're using a bunch of different qualifications. So, tangibles and intangibles. What do they, how did the interview go? What do we like his aggressiveness? What's more interesting is like when different scouting departments give you a sheet to look at, like, this is how we want you, like they go to a coach, this is how we want you to evaluate the player. It's probably not how the coach would evaluate the player. Now the coach has learned how to evaluate that player in that style because they're trying to work together, but it'll say, like one of the metrics could be aggressiveness. Well, like for a scout to write, oh, I think he's aggressive or he's not aggressive, as far as, an offensive lineman, if he's finishing through the whistle, that could mean he's aggressive. That could also mean he's in incredible shape. As we've talked about before, everybody's aggressive on play 1. Who's aggressive on play 47? Well, the guy who's in better shape. So that kind of stuff, sometimes you're going, I don't know if this all plays out. But I will say this. I think we have a couple more questions to get into this. It's always really interesting when you go to different teams and you think about how they see players. I remember they brought in a kid. I don't want to mention his name, but they brought in like a 5th round guard in Miami. And everybody, oh, he came in, he's exactly what we need. And I remember watching his tape, and I remember meeting him briefly, and I just remember telling, they said, "What do you think?" And I said, Debbie Downer over here. I go, he has no technique. He's bullying guys in a division that's not very good, and he's going to really, really struggle when he gets here unless you have a very, very good development program, because he's basing everything off of athleticism and being a superior athlete, and he's not going to be that here. He's actually not at the level athletically of the guys you already have in the building. Guy never played a snap. And, simply because he came here, we talk about it. A lot of guys, what you have to be able to figure out, what a scout really needs to understand is when the athlete is at the same level as his competitors. In other words, when he shows up in the National Football League and everybody's an elite athlete, does this person have the wherewithal to fix his problems? When he runs into issues, is he able to fix his problems? And if the answer is yes, you put him on this side of the draft board. And if the answer is no, you have a second question. Are we good enough to teach him how to fix his problems in that particular room? Not with like the nutritionist or the sports psychologist or the the people in that room. Are they good enough to help this guy own his process, fix his issues, deal with his problems? If the answer is no, you got to he's off the board, because you can't. You're throwing good money and bad money. Players or plays? That's a great question. I'll tell you something. Here's the thing that rang the most true for me. A really good coach is, the players want two things: opportunity to find success, right? Tools to be successful. Okay. So a really good coach gives you the opportunities to be successful. Having Mike Sherman as a head coach, being an ex-offensive line guy, we knew that we were not going to be put in positions to not find success. Now, that doesn't mean that we were going to be successful. We had to use our individual skills. We had to use our communication, and you have to develop yourself as a player. But you did know going into the game, schematically, you had a chance to be successful. And they did identify, like, oh, John Randall's on the other side. We might want to pay him extra attention. Oh, Javon Curse is over there. We might want to pay him extra attention. So I think that's very important. But ultimately, your value as an NFL athlete in every position but quarterback and kicker is based on your ability to win your 1v1 matchup. If you can win your 1v1 matchup, you're valuable. If you can't, they have to start going, oh, well, if we put him, if we squint our eyes, put him like this, he's a good locker room guy. You have to find reasons to keep him. If you can win your 1v1 matchup, you can run the scheme. If the easier the scheme is, the more scheme-friendly things are, the more stuff you can run regardless. So I think it is a combination of both. You see a lot of good teams with a lot of bad play callers not do well. How do vets feel about incoming draft picks at their position? It depends where you are in your career, I think, and how much confidence you have in yourself. When guys come in and you think, hey, I feel like I'm one of the best guys at my position in the league, you can bring in whoever you want. They're usually not going to be a first-round draft pick. And so you're going, hey, let's teach this guy. Let's help build the sport. Let's just give the guy what he needs to be successful if he wants it. If a guy comes in and he knows everything, usually those guys, especially in the offensive line room, they very quickly get erased, right? If a guy comes in and acts like he knows everything, or he's just not cool with the guys, he thinks he's better than everybody, he's putting up airs for whatever reason, and in the rooms I've been in, he's going to be erased quickly. At least in Green Bay. Places like Carolina, it may be a little bit different, but if a guy's a first-round draft pick or a high draft pick, they're basically saying, like, we're trying to replace you. Now, it's not like you hold any hostility or animosity towards that guy or even the franchise, but it is sending a message, like, we don't think you're good enough, so you just have to make a decision on what you want to do. Do you want to improve and prove them wrong? Are you satisfied? Do you enjoy the challenge? Like, is that because that's why we all got into the sport in the first place? Is like we want these physical, demanding, emotional challenges. So I just think it's your perspective and how you handle it. But the better player you are, the less scared you are of, it's like when Aaron Rodgers and they draft Jordan Love. It's not like Aaron Rodgers thinks Jordan Love's good enough to replace him, but he does know that that means the franchise is thinking about his end game, which makes him think about it, which makes him uncomfortable, which makes kind of the whole saga go along. If somebody drafts somebody, at a high level behind me, I know that means probably in 2 or 3 years, they're thinking that guy, when my contract's up, they're going to replace me. I don't think he's going to replace me tomorrow, but I think they're probably thinking about replacing me in 2, 3 years, and that's a future problem. We'll see where we are in 2, 3 years. How do player scouting look from the perspective of a college player? It's an interesting question. So it depends. Again, franchises are different. You've heard about the combine questions. Like, some guys are trying to be funny. Some guys are trying to stump you. Some guys are being assholes. There's all the different. The New York Giants used to make you do a 400-page questionnaire that they use for like some sort of thing, psychological evaluation. So there's groups that you're just like, I don't want to be a part of this. There's guys that have special drills that they want to measure outside of the combine. Like, they do a T drill that's different than like the L drill because they wanted to be special. I think now it's so scripted with the agents. Like, the agents either tell them or hire somebody to help them with all the scripted answers and all that. I think a player feels like he's probably at a beauty pageant or something, and they're just, we're going to go walk over here and shake this guy's hand and smile and say the right thing. And I just remember when I was going through it, in a different situation, different time. But I remember one of the guys asked me, what do you think? And I just said, I really wish we could go down and just go to some grass and put my hand in the dirt and you guys put me through some drills. That would be a lot more fun for me. That's all they want to do, is they want to go play. Question: are the players aware of the development or lack thereof that exists as part of team culture? How aware were you when you were drafted? This is interesting. So, no, I think maybe more so now. Like, in other words, everybody knows that Bill Callahan is a great developer of talent of the offensive line room. Everybody knows that for 20, 30 years, the Green Bay Packers have developed a lot of really good offensive linemen. Right? They had 2 generations of really, really good offensive line play. So I think guys know that. But when you're getting drafted, you can't control where you're going. You just go, okay, I'm so excited to be here. Okay, I'm going to make it work. And the other thing is, nobody ever expects that like a team isn't good at developing talent. Like, nobody. If I walk down the street and I tell anybody, we meet somebody, I go, hey, that team's not very good at developing talent, everybody just goes, they're in the National Football League. They're the elite of the elite. And this is what you hear from guys like Coach Gino, I was not screw up his butcher's last name, from UConn. You hear from some NFL, Belichick. There's some guys who are really good coaches. Some guys aren't. And they're still in the National Football League, just like they're still in the NBA, still in college basketball, etc. When I was in college, now we ran the option, so it's completely different. I was not NFL ready by any means when I got to the NFL. But when I was in college and what we did, I had Gene McKinnon and Todd Spencer as my coaches, offensive line coaches. And they were developmental guys, very, very detailed, very precise, very, very clear about how the style that he wanted you to play, the pace, the aggressiveness, everything. I loved them. I loved it. Now, when I got to Green Bay, and I've told this story before because I was holding out and all this stuff, Mike was like, day one, and you talk about the veteran team, 2 Super Bowl appearances in the last 2 years. Mike was like, you're on your own. Figure it out. Tom Levant was like, I got to coach the players that are getting coached. So when you say developmental culture, for me, as a guy coming in who has no background in the National Football League, it was go watch what Jeff Dellenbach's doing because he's the backup to Frank, and watch Frank and see how they do business. And if you could pick up some things, and watch Timmer and watch Earl. And if you could pick up some things from them, you're going to probably be in better shape if not. But otherwise, like, you're just here figuring things out, try to keep up. So things have changed a little bit, I think, in the league. But, with a lot of these teams, if you don't have a good developmental process for certain rooms or overall, you can just bring in a lot of those guys, and in some positions are more NFL ready than others. But a lot of those guys, one of the reasons, and we talk about offensive line a lot here, but one of the reasons that you don't see a lot of offensive line transferring is if you've got a good offensive lineman, even if he's your 5th, 6th, or 7th guy, you just pay him. You don't get rid of him anymore because they're too hard to develop. There's just not a lot of good ones in the National Football League. How translatable are the techniques of different offensive line positions? Does playing center or guard early hurt one's ability to play tackle later? Okay. Because of the geometry of the pocket, shotgun, 5-step drop, quarterback hits it 11 or 12 yards. Guards and tackles shouldn't really be setting too differently from each other now than they used to. Centers, you're snapping a ball. There's a lot going on there. So there's, but look, basically footwork is this, the thought process at point X when you're having confrontation is the same. Can I stay square to the line of scrimmage? Am I in an athletic position? How much, am I showing the top of the number, shoulder pads, helmet, and hands? Like, am I giving the guy a good body profile? So from that standpoint, like all these guys are very, very similar. How they get there, there's some subtle differences. And I think it's more different from tackle to center than it is from tackle to guard, if that makes sense. So the biggest difference, quite frankly, is on that very far outside, there's no bumper in the C gap. There's no tight end blocking. Like, in other words, if there's a tight end in every time that he was just doing a pass set, the tackle would be very, very, like, almost identical to the guard because there's this guy on the outside of the defensive end that doesn't let him go straight up field. When you play at guard, yeah, that you can get some center slide, but listen, every team slides the center one way or the other, so the tackle's getting inside help as well. But the difference really is when that defensive tackle gets in the B gap, he can't just run straight up field because the tackle's sitting right there. So there's a bumper on the outside. So there's a smaller amount of space. Whereas out there, especially with some of these coaches coach, and they try to get that tackle like wider early on 45 degree and you hear all this stuff. There's so much space between that tackle and the guard now to make up for the fact that there's not a C gap bumper at the tight end with the tight end. That defensive end's got a ton of room to roam. So you have to account for that more than anything. I think that's the hardest part. Last question here. Except RAS scores, what are the top 2 or 3 things or traits Green Bay targets in offensive linemen for future development purposes? Ooh. So aside from how they look body profile wise, well, then the other thing, the most important thing is you would hope, I don't know what Green Bay does specifically, but you'd hope in an interview process, we put them on the board, like what their character is like, what their behaviors are, how they go about trying to improve, what they understand about the process of development. Do they have the demeanor that you like? Do they have the work ethic that you like? Are they enthusiastic about attacking them? Their areas of opportunity in the weight room? Are they enthusiastic about watching film? Are they enthusiastic about getting out early and putting time in to become the better version of themselves on the practice field? Do they have routines they do pre-practice or post-practice? If not, do they seem like the kind of guys that are serious about this and want to do that? Or are they just excited to be in the NFL? I think the biggest question, if we're being honest with everybody, is once you get to the NFL, are you excited to be there? Or are you trying to be the best version of you? There's so many guys at every level. You make the high school football team. It's like, I made it. I'm happy. This is all I wanted. I don't want to put in the extra time to be great. You make college. You get it accepted into college. I made it. I'm going to get a college. I have a college scholarship, or I get accepted into college. I'm going to get a college degree. If I'm the backup or the third string guy, that's okay. I love playing football. It's fun. I'm not being driven to be the best I can be. That's fine. Now you get to the NFL. I made it to the NFL. I can buy fancy cars. I can afford more things I wouldn't be able to afford. I can take care of my family. I made it. I'm going to make a lot of money regardless. I can be the second string running back or wide receiver, DB, whatever. Or I'm good enough to start because I have so much talent, but I'm not really going to work to be an all pro. I'm not really going to work to be a Pro Bowl guy. I'm not really going to work to make it into the ring honor for this team because I don't want to put in that kind of time. If they had a litmus test, they could let's just find the guys that'll do whatever it takes. This would be a really, really easy process. And that's why the agents do such a good job, I think, of screening their athletes, because they want them to say the right thing all the time. All right, we're wrapping up here on 1 minute. Guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope those listener questions help the fans out there, especially going into this draft period. There's a lot of things that are difficult, certainly, about picking out the right guys in any of these situations, but you always got to ask yourself, are they asking the right questions? You can find me, Mike Wahle 68 on Twitter or X, Process to Perform on Instagram. And again, hit that like button on this Process to Perform channel on YouTube, guys. Thank you so much. And